So I think to start, like, think back 25 years, Diana. What was it? What was the world like? Your world like 25 years ago? 19. What would that be like? 1998. We've seen a lot of changes. How was it different back then? This whole world of investors and
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
Well, in 1998, 1999, this is pretty much when I started in this business, in this industry, and the world was quite different. There was
Mm,
I mean, most of venture capital was just very um, much internet related. There were
mm, mm,
few companies that were launched out of Europe and that generate the so-called bubble at the time later on in year 2000 and 2001. And I mean, there was a newly born industry in venture that was almost entirely dead after a few years. And the few survivors, we were very few survivors around Europe. And I mean, that's when we sort of learned how to work together, and we started
mm,
this learning curve. And I have to say that Tector contributed a lot to the process.
mhm,
Because at the time, Tector was organized by country, by geography. Everyone would remember at the time it was about discovering a country, discovering the,
mm,
the best companies in the country, and discover
mm,
the best and get to know the best players in that country. And it was very useful
mm,
exercise we had to go through to start working as an industry, and that was much more that became over time much more pan-European than
mm.
it was at the time.
That's really interesting. And 25 years, it seems like a long, long time, and yet it's not. It's happened. It's come quickly. And how do you think? You said what we were learning then was how to kind of work together. How do you think that has affected maybe where we are today? This ability to kind of work together and do you see it being different today than it was 25 years ago?
Well, totally. At the time, it was an industry that was very local, and eventually, most of us were generalist fund. We were doing venture capital, and we were
Mm,
pretty much sector agnostic. Well, most of the activity was around the internet, but
mm,
we were all of us, most of us were pretty much sector agnostic. And over time,
mm,
the industry was completely changed. We became much more, all of us became much more pan-European, so able to invest across geographies. And while at the same time we became much more focused on a certain sector. And
mm,
I mean, this is my personal history. I co-founded a company 20 years ago called 360 Capital to be able to invest in all sectors and we were very focused on a couple of geographies. And while after that, 7 years ago, I co-founded Panacas, which is a
mm,
venture capital firm investing only in life science,
mm,
but
mm,
uh, definitely across Europe and beyond. I mean, including
mm,
Israel and the US and Canada.
mm,
So
mm,
it goes. It's the more and more you need to. We were acting more and more as a focus and expert and specialist fund rather than generalist, while geography is less and less relevant.
mm. So I hear you saying that the market or the industry, the ecosystem back then was much more, again, focused to the internet and kind of broad and general. And now where you are today is much more focused on life sciences and maybe a completely different type of a focus. Is the way that we work together and collaborate together different today than it was 25 years ago? The willingness or perhaps the methods?
Yes, it is. I mean, we pay much more attention to the people we co-invest with, for example,
Mm-hmm.
an
Mm-hmm.
attitude we didn't have much in the past. We hope the governance would sort out all sort of issue, and we learn over
Mm-hmm.
time that it's important to, uh, I mean, it's important to find to build up strong syndicate. We recognize our own expertise also not only in terms of sector but also in terms of stage.
Mm,
There are some funds which are very good in seed and early stage, and some funds which are very good in later stage.
mm,
You need different skills, different expertise. So that's
mm,
so the more this industry develops, and the more we have clear positioning of the various players into some segment. Segment meaning
mm,
being given by sector,
mm.
stage of the company, and still, I mean, a little bit from geography, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of struck, Diana, by the fact that, or not by the fact, by the fact, struck with the feeling that what we're learning as human beings right now is how to collaborate, how to work more closely together. And if we look back 25 years ago, it was perhaps much more segmented, whereas today we are learning how to work more closely together, how to collaborate across different boundaries and so forth. And there's a higher level of specialization. We're going deeper and deeper into specialty areas, you into life sciences, and some of these amazing things that you guys are working on. Um, and somehow I feel like that's what we as human beings have to do. We have to learn how to collaborate and stop thinking about the fact that I'm in Norway and you're in Italy, and rather realizing that we're all in this together. So, how do you think, if we were to look like 25 years into the future, what do you think the way of working and kind of existing within this kind of environment is going to be like 25 years from now? I know that's a crazy far
Well, I
away,
have to
but
speak for Europe, because I mean, globally we have different situations. But if I can speak for Europe, I think 25 years from now, this industry will have developed even further and in pretty much
Mhm,
in the same direction, and will be recognized as fundamental to solve the big issues this planet
mhm,
has. And it
mhm,
goes from treating patients and diseases to everything that's related to energy and green technologies from of all
mhm,
kinds.
mhm,
And also, I mean, the everything that's making our life easier on a daily basis, which is the big digital trend behind that, will also continue as it is. So it will be more and more recognized as an industry, if, that is key and important for Europe, as it is as it has been for decades now in the US. Um, Plus, I mean, this industry, as it is already obvious by some numbers, will have generated very interesting returns for investors. For the first
mhm,
time, I'm sure you know, the venture capital, European venture capital, has beaten US venture capital in performance, which is a fantastic achievement.
mhm, mhm.
And then I think from there on, there are several years of good returns ahead of us.
Mm, exciting. Hey, what advice would you give if you were talking to a young tech entrepreneur, especially in life sciences field, which is such a fascinating, fast-moving field? What advice would you have for them if you're kind of pointing them towards that future 25 years from now? What advice would you have?
Hmm. Um, be brave. Never give
Yes,
up.
yes.
Equip yourself with the right
Mm,
talents. Um, the sooner the better,
mm.
and um, and have fun, because
Yeah, yeah.
you will be asked to be fully dedicated to what
Mm.
you're doing, and it can only be possible if you have fun in what you do.
Absolutely. I think that's really great advice because when we have fun and we're at our best, all of our neurons are firing, we're awake, we're alive. And that's when we do our best work. That's thank you. I I can't help but ask you because you're working in neurosciences and so much of I think so much of the breakthroughs that we're going to see 25 years from now will happen in that front. As I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately by both science fiction writers as well as people who are futurists and kind of really trying to understand this whole one of the things they're calling transhuman. In other words, we are in the process of transfer of transforming and becoming maybe something we don't even realize that we're becoming on that. It's really love it. Scary, but it's also a beautiful thing because there's so much opportunity there. What do you is this something that you think about as an investor in this area?
Well, sure. I mean, in neuroscience, there are still huge unmet medical needs, unfortunately, and it's an industry that has been seen some initial results in major disease like Alzheimer, for example,
Mm-hmm.
which is a
Mm-hmm.
disease affecting a huge stake of the elderly population, and some very recent progress have been achieved, and we have seen products reaching the market for the treatment, as well as some amazing progress in the early diagnosis of the disease, for
Mm-hmm.
example, which will could eventually change the final outcome and the final prognosis for the patients. I mean, just to mention one of the many disease, CNS disease,
Mm-hmm.
but which is quite important. But
Yeah.
I think the industry is will see there are different approaches coming into the market for also other disease, and uh, it we there's a lot they're going to be very exciting news in the future and 20
Yeah.
years ahead of us. And hopefully that will be a much smaller medical need. That's what we'll work
Mm-hmm.
for.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's a really, really exciting time. I I only wish I was younger, so I got to see more of it because I think it really is fascinating and it's so interesting, Diana, that politics and politicians have a certain influence on the way and the direction this goes, but capital has a huge, huge role to play because in directing where we're going with some of these things. And it wouldn't surprise me if 25 years from now we see a much more emphasis and focus on the the actual power of capital and its ability to transform the future and to an even greater extent than we already have today. So interesting times. And thank you said that these entrepreneurs should be brave but have fun, and
Indeed.
that's
Be
fantastic.
brave and have fun.
Be brave and have fun. Love it.